So welcome back to the next video in the series. Our last video had us add the feature to be able to handle any number of pieces on our chessboard. So in this video, we're just going to sort of quickly go through and add the rest of our pieces. And maybe we'll clean up a little bit here and see how we're doing. To get started, we're going to sort of do this little dance that we're hopefully getting used to. What we have to do is Control C out of any web servers that you're running. And then we're going to want to pick a branch real quick. And to get started with this video, we're going to switch to branch number 2. Before we do that, what we want to do is check out the source of our app again, because we want to overwrite any changes that we made. And like we saw in the last video, you can also use the stash for this, but checkout is just as nice. If you're following along and you're making some of these changes, this checkout command gets you back to the baseline. So now what we want to do is check out the branch, and instead of naming a file, we're naming a branch, so we're going to check out that branch, part 2. And this video is going to take us from all the way from part 2 to part 3. It's not going to be a lot of code. So now we're on part 2. Let's see if we can get, yep, okay, we got part 2 loaded here. So this is sort of the starting state. We're going to work towards the next part. Let's go ahead and fire up a new server. There we go. We can close the old window. And we should be able to move things around. But right now, none of our clicks are sort of changing the state. So we want to fix that. And we talked last time about how React doesn't necessarily like us to do things by directly manipulating the references. And the reason for that, in our case, is that when there's a call to set state, in order to change something about the page that we're looking at, React will intelligently go through and figure out what chunks of this document it needs to update. And if nothing has changed in our cells or any of the squares, then React is not going to re-render any of those. So even though we've added something to the class list here on this reference, it's not going to have an effect on our application here because it's not actually calling the re-render function. So in order to make this a little more Reacty, we want to go ahead and get rid of these references because they're not really doing anything for us. Looks like we remove it here. So the Reacty thing to do is we still want to use the cell selected idea. We can even get rid of this React ref here. We want to sort of come up with a way to add the class cell selected here. So the way to do that is we can still reference the state in this thing. So what we want to do is capture the fact that this cell is selected. And in order to do that, all we really have to do is we have an ID here, and we're storing the ID in this selected variable. So if we've done that and we're talking about this specific cell, then we should be able to do a check by getting the selected ID. So we could do if ID equals selected, actually we want to say this dot state dot selected, right? So now React should be smart enough to realize it's got to to change a cell if something happens to selected. So in this case, what we want to do is change the class name to cell selected. Well, we really want both, right? So we can make we can just make our own class list here. We can say let class list equals cell, and then if they are equivalent, we can just add class list plus equals. We'll have a space in there. Cell selected. Let's see if that does anything for us. Oh, we got a failure here. Class list. Oh, okay. I have to make sure I camel case this correctly. There we go. Let's see what we got. Previous ref is assigned a value and is never used. Okay. So it's letting us know we never use class list, which makes sense. We have to actually use it here. So let's do that. Class list. Okay. And we can get rid of that previous ref thing too. So that simplifies the logic of our selected function. Ah, there we go. Now we're getting a yellow box. So what's happening is when selected is getting updated, and we're getting this set state here, React knows, aha, now I can go all the way down. We've got a thing here that depends on that part of the state. And don't ask me how it does this, but React is figuring out where it needs to go in order to update this document and render it. So it's going to be smart about different things. If there's something that changes about the state in one little tiny part of the screen, it's not going to re-render the whole thing. Which can be really surprising, actually, considering what it's doing here. But React, if you remember, React is compiling something anyway. So React knows that there's some reference to state in here, and it knows that the reference has to do with whether something was selected. So all it has to do is keep a list of what things are updated by any particular part of the state. So so now that simplified things a lot. We've got cell and cell selected. So the only other thing we might want to do at this point, just to sort of, you know, we can do some more testing here. We haven't gotten the chance to actually trying this case we wrote last time, where we made it so that a particular color wouldn't work. So rather than watch me type in all of these various pieces, I have it copied off screen here, and we'll just paste it in. We can paste our whole chessboard there, canned chessboard, ready to go. And it looks good, and there it is. So now we should be able to click on a piece, and sure enough, there we go. We can immediately win still. Nothing's stopping that. In fact, it looks like we can quickly clear the board just by having one piece eat the other. So there's no turn-based restrictions here either. It's a little bit in like having a real board. So we're going back to the state of being started here, just by refreshing the page. And we, you know, the other problem is we've got our board is not really a chessboard. A1, that's not really the right address of this. A2, well, A2, really, I think, how do chessboards go again? I think they go, chessboards go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and then they go 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're going to need to start thinking about that next. Let's go ahead and jump into that a little bit. But first, what we're going to do is introduce the concept of testing here. So you might have noticed when the React app was created, we got for free this extra little test guy. A lot of teams and sort of the culture of programming these days often dictates that any code you write comes with these tests to sort of prove that your code works. And it also serves to show as like an example, and you can also then think about, in terms of does it make sense, or it sort of gives it an external check. Let me show you how this works. It's actually pretty slick. If you Control C out of your thing here, then you can actually run NPM Test instead. And you'll see that it goes ahead and just runs, and in this case fails. And the reason it fails is because it didn't find the text learn react in there, which was the canned example. In our case, I guess we've got a white queen. And this I just means to ignore whether it's upper or lowercase. We can get rid of that. And now if we save this file, it works just like the other thing, and it automatically runs. And as you can see, one of the things that we sort of neglected is that in our loop, we haven't given a key property to each one of our little child in a list. So React is really explicit here. Each child in a list should have a unique key property. This is actually really easy to fix. It comes down to this part right here. It wants each thing in the list to have a key property. And actually, you'll see we'll even get an error if we try to like, stick another child off of this. I think we'll get an error. Let's see. It should fail to render. Yeah, failed to render. It won't parse because there should only be one thing in each loop, right? So one child. The child in the loop can have as many children as it wants, but each loop kind of has one thing going on. So each one of those things needs to have a key, and what we really need to do is just stick a key attribute on there. Now, if you just have like one loop in your component or whatever, you can kind of get away with just doing this row num, right? Because then the key of the thing is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But you might want to sort of preface it a little bit and give it a little bit of a unique key, like R underscore. In this case, we have a little bit of a collision here if we had row 0, column 0. And we got to do the same thing with this cell. We kind of don't care about this property, but key equals, this is just some bookkeeping for React. Row num, and this one's going to be R, well, let's do it this way, R underscore plus row num plus C underscore plus column num. And so that has made our tests happy. So any changes that you make in the test, and you can actually sort of drag this over. It's pretty common to make yourself a little bit of a window to work in, and you can have your code over here, you can have your tests over here. Some people like to switch back and forth. But that just sort of gets us a little bit further down the road. Some projects you'll find there are teams out there that they swear by this. I don't know about the necessity of um, unit testing in React. It's definitely easy to do. Uh, this file watcher thing makes it a lot easier, and it works pretty fast compared to some other unit test systems. So some developer, just to let you know, some of these groups get kind of militant and they require that these pass before they get pushed to production. That's not a bad idea. I think it works better for when there's a larger team. But since we're just sort of learning the ropes here, we might come back to this one more time, because the real case you would want to do this is not to make sure that your app is rendering and that there's certain things in it. That's sort of dumb in a way. The value of unit tests is to test a function that accomplishes some kind of computation. So there may be some computations in here that we want to test, and I think we're going to get into that in the next video. So we're going to keep this one a little bit shorter. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the next React video.